Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Sorry, like this is a whole process. This is what we edit out, Selena, in the
Okay.
uh, there it is. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our Q&A town hall with our endorsed candidate. My name is Melissa, and I'm the endorsements manager for Building Bridges and Roadmap for Progress. If you are new to our group, just tell us where you're from in the chat and say hello. Building Bridges for America was formed in 2020 when Mayor Pete was running for president, and we are guided by the principles of servant leadership, and we really work to mobilize and empower a network of relational grassroots organizers to then help support campaigns and causes based in progressive values. Our values are based on Secretary Pete's rules of the road, which are respect, belonging, truth, teamwork, boldness, responsibility, substance, discipline, excellence, and joy. We view everything we do through four lenses, which are belonging, bridging a rural and urban divide, racial equity, and democratic reform. Every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Building Bridges offers free political organizational classes that range in topics from how to have hard conversations, popping the disinformation bubble, Civics 101, amongst many others. And you can go to buildingbridgesforamerica.com to sign up for any of these free classes. We also have currently 36 endorsed candidates like our guest tonight, and they are all coming up on their November 8th election. Really exciting. And we do these Q&A town halls on Sunday evenings, and we also help with postcard writing, phone banking, and text banking. Tonight's special guest is Selena LaRue Hatch, who is running for Nevada Assembly in District 25. You can go to her website to learn more at selenafornevada.com, and you can follow her on all the normal social media of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then you can also follow Building Bridges on the same at Build Bridges for America. And now I'm going to stop my screen sharing and kick it over to Selena to do an introduction on herself and why she's running for office.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. So I'm a fourth generation Nevadan, and I have been teaching here in Washoe County for about the past 10 years. And I have been fighting for my students that whole time. We are in some of the worst situation as far as schools go in the nation. We have some of the lowest funding. We have the highest class sizes. I've got 40 kids in each of my 6 classes that I teach at high school. And I have spent the last 10 years going to protests, lobbying the legislature, trying to do everything I can to fix this issue for our kids. And it just felt like we were rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, but not actually making the changes that we needed. And so I decided, you know what, if they are not listening to my voice or my kids' voices from outside the building, then I need to get inside the building and make sure that they're heard. And so that's really why I am running for this office.
Thank you, Selena. I very much appreciate that. I'm going to kick it off with our first question to a topic that's near and dear, I'm sure, to your heart, of public education. It's being attacked by a lot of people nationwide for anything from CRT banning books, vouchers for charter schools. How is public education and what's happening in Nevada?
So I think you exactly described what is happening. My opponent is running on getting CRT out of our schools and getting sex education out of our schools and a whole lot of other things. And, you know, I am a social studies teacher. As a social studies teacher, I can tell you when people started talking about CRT, I had to actually go Google what that was, this thing that I was supposedly teaching in my classrooms, because I had never heard of it. And so I think there's a lot of noise, and I think there's a lot of distractions out there, a lot of people wanting to fight culture wars through our schools. And I think it's unfortunate, because I think all of us can unify behind the fact that we don't want our kids in classes of 40. We want our kids to actually get the attention that they deserve. I think across bipartisan lines, we want to invest in our schools and make sure the money is actually getting to our schools. But I think too often the conversation and these fights are being had by people that are not actually in our classrooms, and it's serving as a distraction to the true needs.
Thank you. I know that's, like I said, near and dear to your heart being a teacher, and thank you for all that you do in the classroom and fighting for our students. Jumping to rural voters and minority voters, how is the makeup of your district? Is it rural, urban, suburban, and are there big minority populations? And how are you reaching all of those populations?
Yeah, so my district is mostly a suburban district. There's a tiny bit of rural in it. And I actually grew up on a ranch north of Reno. So I actually grew up in the rurals. And so I definitely understand the needs of the rurals and how they differ a lot from our urban areas. And we need to make sure we're not forgetting about them. Even though obviously I am being represented, or I will be representing my district, I will be governing for the state. And so I think it's very important that we are reaching across the lines and we are making sure we're serving all Nevadans as we're making those laws. And the same thing talking about marginalized communities or minority populations. I think that we absolutely need to make sure they have a voice at the table. I teach history. I know that there's a lot of communities that have not had that voice at the table for a long time. And so I am very much a leader that doesn't believe I need to come in and say, I have all the answers, listen to me. I am someone that needs to say, hey, here's a microphone, tell us what you need. And I need to make sure that we're listening to the whole community when we are coming up with solutions.
Thank you. That's a breath of fresh air. Definitely. You need to reach out to everyone. Susan asked, does your district have staffing problems getting substitute or regular teachers? What can the schools or state do to entice more teachers?
Yeah, it's a huge problem in our state. We have a critical shortage of regular education teachers as well as substitute teachers. At our high school, most high school teachers are having to prep sub every day, which means the time that I'm supposed to be preparing for my classes, I have to go cover for another teacher because we don't get enough substitutes in the building. And I think that a huge part of it is pay. In our city, to afford a 1-bedroom apartment, you need to make at least $50,000 a year. Starting salary for a teacher is $40,000 a year. So our teachers can't even afford to live in the city. There's an initiative by the Nevada State Education Association right now called the Time for 20 Initiative, which is calling for a 20% pay increase for all of our current school personnel, a $20 minimum wage for our support personnel, so our bus drivers, our custodians, those kinds of things, and then a class size of 20. And I think that those three things together would do a lot to address the critical shortages, not only in our teachers, but also our bus drivers and our custodians. We last year couldn't get all of our kids to school because we didn't have enough bus drivers. And I think that is pretty horrifying when we as a society can't even get our kids to school because we're not paying people a living wage.
That is horrible about the bus drivers. And I think it's a nationwide issue, definitely. So on voters and voting protection, what changes would you like to see made to make it easier to vote in Nevada? And how is the voting system set up now currently?
So in Nevada, I think that we've done a pretty good job in the last legislature of expanding the franchise. We now have universal mail-in ballots, which I support. We allow people to give their ballot to someone they trust to turn in. So for our Native American populations on reservations, they can appoint one person to take in all of the ballots. And I think we've done a good job. We do have a lot of election deniers in our state. We have our Secretary of State is one of the biggest, a candidate running for Secretary of State is one of the biggest election deniers in the country. He has said if he wins, he is going to certify for 2024 for Trump, no matter what. Kind of scary when someone predetermines the election. And so I think what we need right now is we need people that are going to champion our democracy and are going to make sure that we continue to protect our rights and we continue to protect these different ways that people can participate in the voting process.
Absolutely. And that's horrifying about that person running for Secretary of State, predetermining the outcome of an election. We're a democracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So does Nevada have a big problem with gerrymandered maps, or are you guys pretty good on that in that area?
I think that all parties practice gerrymandering across the entire nation, right? I don't know that there's any state that doesn't. I think that it's not as bad as a lot of states, for sure. I think that we have some competitive districts. I'm in a competitive district. It's a +2 Dem district. So it's not for sure heavily weighted towards one side or the other. But I know that that is an issue, and we need to make sure that we have districts that are being drawn fairly so that everyone actually gets a voice across the nation.
Absolutely. So activating younger voters, how are you activating younger voters in your district to get them involved with your campaign and to basically show them how important civics is to their daily life?
Well, so I am a high school social studies teacher, so I've been activating voters for the last 10 years by just telling our kids that they need to vote. But I do think it is critical that we get young people involved in the elections. I've got a lot of young volunteers on my campaign. I've got some field organizers that are in college. We're constantly reaching out to the young Dems on the college campus and trying to get people to realize how critical this election is. Luckily in Nevada, like I said, it's pretty easy to vote. We have same day registration, so they can go and they can register that day and then they can vote. And so it's really important that we're getting the message out there to them that their voice matters and they can make a difference and they need to use it.
That's great. On affordable housing, is there a lack of affordable housing in your district? And if so, how can you help ease that situation when elected to the Nevada Assembly?
So we have a severe shortage of affordable housing, especially here in Reno. Our median housing price, I think, is about $600,000 for a house. And like I said, to rent an apartment, you need to make at least $50,000 a year for a 1-bedroom. So it is skyrocketing. And a huge issue here in Nevada is a lot of out-of-state investors are coming in, buying up entire neighborhoods with cash offers. So they're outbidding everybody trying to get a house and then turning around and renting it at exorbitant rates. And so I think something needs to be done about these investment companies buying up entire neighborhoods. I also think we are in a valley, so we're running out of land. We just can't keep expanding like we have. And so we need to start building up. And so I think we need to look at zoning laws, and we need to figure out how we can get more multifamily units and not just single family units so that we can have more housing inventory to keep up with the demand.
Absolutely. And so jumping to the environment in Nevada, what are the biggest environmental concerns in Nevada, especially in your district with Reno?
So climate change is an existential threat for us, as it is for pretty much everyone. Our summers are pretty much smoke season. We have these huge wildfires here and in California. Last year, my daughter, who is now 5, could not go outside all summer because the smoke was so hazardous every single day. And that is horrifying. On top of that, we have one of the worst droughts that we have ever seen in anyone's lifetime. And the Colorado River is losing water, and that is a huge source of our water supply. And so addressing climate change is absolutely one of our top priorities, because otherwise we're not going to be able to continue to live here.
So what are the things that are being done currently right now in Nevada to address, especially the water supply?
Yeah, so the water supply is the number one issue. We're in a desert. We generally are pretty good about water conservation, and there have been laws that have been passed recently to work on that. So for example, last session, they passed a law in Las Vegas, which is our southern city, that no one could have decorative turf anymore. So like no grass lawns, everything had to be xeriscaped. We're not going to be wasting water on like non-functional turf. And so there's a lot of laws like that working on conservation, trying to make sure we're keeping our water where we most need it. But it also, we are a downriver state. And so it depends on all of the other states upriver also conserving. And so we have to make all these agreements and make sure we're working with the other states so that we can maintain this water source.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Let's see. So jumping to abortion, because that's a really big topic, obviously, on many people's minds this year. How have things been going with Nevada since Roe fell and Dobbs this summer?
So Nevada back in the 1990s codified the right to abortion in our state law. So we protect abortion up to 24 weeks, and that can only be overturned by a vote of the people. And Nevada is a very interesting state in that we are a purple state. We're very much a swing state, but our Republicans tend to be the kind that want to be left alone. So even our conservatives here in Nevada, a lot of them are like, hey, I don't want the government getting involved in our private medical decisions, which I think is good. Most Nevadans do not want the government involved between them and their doctor. And so it is a critical issue because even though it's protected by statute, there are things that the governor or the legislature can do to make it harder. They can put waiting periods, they can mandate, mandatory ultrasounds, all kinds of things to slow down the process of gaining access to an abortion. And there are people like my opponent in this race that want to do that. And so I think it's really critical that we are electing people that are going to defend that right. But I do have faith in the Nevada electorate that I think they see that and they are going to do the right thing there.
How is there a large homeless population in Reno and like in your district? And if so, what are they doing locally and at the state level to address those issues with the homeless?
Yeah, I think there is a decently large homeless population here in Reno and down in Las Vegas. And I think there have been some things done. They consolidated the agencies that were in charge of homeless, because originally we had like different entities, we're all working on different things. And so recently they consolidated into one entity, which I think is good because then we can streamline services. But a huge issue obviously is mental health. And we have some of the fewest mental health providers per capita in the nation. And we don't have a whole lot of money going to support that. And so I definitely think we need to be investing in those things. We have a new campus here in Reno, a brand new homeless shelter, which a lot of money went into from the American Rescue Plan, and that's super awesome. Now we need to make sure we're continuing to invest in it to ensure it's staffed. It's got the mental health professionals, it's got the rehab professionals, it's got all the people that we need to support that population.
That's fantastic. Lisa wants to know, during the 2020 election, people in Nevada on phone banks talked about garbage storage and disposal being an ongoing issue.
Oh, that's interesting. I have not seen that as an issue. Maybe that's a Vegas issue, but I haven't seen anything in our community that's necessarily an issue.
I guess that's a good thing for Reno, definitely. Yeah. What about, I know you said you have some fringes on the rural areas. Is rural broadband something that is desperately needed in some of the communities in Nevada?
Oh yeah, rural broadband is a huge issue. And I think, it's one of the things that I want to make sure we are working on, and we're spending our American Rescue dollars on it or whatever else we can to make sure everyone has that access.
What type of infrastructure problems do you have in your district that you would like to see addressed by some of the infrastructure bills coming to Nevada?
Well, what I would really like us to see is work on more public transit. I especially would really like to see a light rail system in Reno. We have huge traffic issues, especially with so many people moving and there's so much growth and so much development. And a light rail would solve that. But it would also address that issue that I talked about with climate change, because our number one emission here in Nevada comes from vehicle emissions. And so if we had more light rail, and if we could also move a lot of our freight away from trucks and onto our rail system, I think that would do an incredible amount in addressing our emissions.
Thank you. That would be a great help, I'm sure. So one thing that many voters are concerned about right now are the economy and inflation. And I've heard quite a few blame the current president for that. What kind of issues are you getting when you go and knock doors or make phone calls about the economy and inflation? How do you combat that?
Yeah, so I think that people are definitely worried about their pocketbooks, right? I mean, right. The money that we're spending is not going as far. And while I, as a state assemblywoman, cannot fix global inflation, because it is global, right? It's not just the United States, it's everywhere. And it's for a whole lot of reasons. I can't fix global inflation. However, I can pass laws so that those of us who are actually working for a living do not get left behind. And that is tying minimum wage to inflation, ensuring that our public workers are making a living wage. There's all kinds of things we can do to ensure that the average Joe is not being wiped out by inflation.
What type of, are you seeing any backlash against the LGBTQ and trans community in Nevada that seems to be happening nationwide?
There are definitely candidates running this cycle on those kinds of issues. Our candidate for Attorney General has used slurs when referring to transgender individuals and is making that a huge wedge issue that she is trying to run on. And, you know, it's appalling. I have LGBTQ students in my classroom, and it's my job to make sure that they feel welcomed and loved and supported. And it's really sad to me that all these politicians are choosing to pick on children and members of our community who have done nothing to them because they think it's going to win them votes.
Right, absolutely. Are you seeing a large, do you have charter schools in Reno? And are you seeing a big push to try to get the vouchers
Yeah, we are
to be able to
seeing a
use
big
them for
push.
charters? Yeah.
Yeah, we're seeing a big push for vouchers. My opponent's number one issue is vouchers, and he wants to see more money going to private schools. And I just don't think that that's right. I don't think that anybody wants to take money meant for our public good and give it to private individuals as free tax money. You know, like if you want to go to a private school, that's fine, but we have to have an educated citizenry. Our democracy does not work if we are not all educated. So if one family gets a voucher and they get to go to a private school, but we are destroying public education in the process, then our community is going to suffer in the long run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As Susan said, public schools educate the masses. Absolutely. So my last question for you is, why should an independent or moderate Republican vote for you versus your opponent?
So look, I am a teacher who is running because our schools are not serving our kids, and that cuts across party lines. I want our diplomas to mean something again. I want our kids to be in reasonable class sizes, and I want to make sure that the money we are investing in education is actually getting to our kids. And there are plenty of other issues that I am fighting for. You know, we mentioned climate change and abortion and other things like that. But I am a fourth generation Nevadan that just wants to do what's right by my community. And my opponent is very extreme. He's an election denier. He wants to funnel money away from our public schools. And I just don't think that my community needs someone like that. I think they need someone that's going to fight for our kids and for all of us.
Absolutely. We all need fighters like that. So we can't wait to see you elected on Tuesday and become the next Nevada Assemblywoman from District 25. And thank you for joining us tonight. I know you have another event to jump to, and we want to respect your time. And thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.